Okay guys, so this is what I'm attaching to you in that UIL, the science UIL email is my biology review, like if we were studying for the STAR test. So it's 2 documents. One of them is like a 1-page cheat sheet that you can print up or I could print up for you, and it has all the concepts for you to be like, okay, do I know what this is? This is, oh, I don't know what this is. Where if you want more help, I've got something that has like all the notes we would have gone over if you were in my class. So like say if you were not good at organ systems, there would be a note sheet for organ systems. So that's the longer thing. It has more of an explanation, but this is the 1-page cheat sheet that we're going to go over. Okay, so the UIL doesn't ask exactly the same stuff, but I was surprised on how some of the easy stuff they ask, kind of like the metaphase question or, you know, stuff like that. But then they go into more detailed things like little enzymes in your body that we never talk about, or biomes that we don't even talk about in high school. So there are the other things that I'll have to make another video or go over with y'all separately. But here's the biology concepts. So biomolecules, okay, so remember, everything that is organic has carbon in it. We're carbon-based creatures, okay, and carbon is the backbone because it binds 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. Those of you who took chemistry knows that its valence electrons are 4, which means it can make 4 more pairs, okay. So all of these are carbon-based. When you watch the Amoeba Sister video, remember, carbs make fats, lipids, then proteins and nucleic acids. Cho, chon, chomp. They're always starting with C. So we have carbs, and the basics of a carb is C6H12O6, quick energy, glucose, starch, also called monosaccharides, polysaccharide, sac of sugar, okay? Lipids, you eat too much carbs, you get fat. They're made from the same basic formula, CHO, cho, but they're in a different chemical formula. So carbs are C6H12O6, whereas lipids could be like C6H26O2, okay? Stored energy is way more calories than a carb. Fatty acid glycerols, fats and oils, and remember, it's in the cell membrane. Your cell membrane is made up of a plasma membrane. Sometimes we call it the cell membrane, sometimes we call it the plasma membrane, sometimes we call it the lipid bilayer, okay? Proteins, cho, chon, has nitrogen, so if you saw a picture, you know it was a protein because it has nitrogen and not phosphorus, okay? So proteins, they're doers, they go, okay? So builds muscle, builds organelles, makes amino acids, okay? So as you can see, there's always like a verb, so proteins are doers. Carbs are just energy. Fats are just energy, but proteins are doers. So remember, when you're talking about DNA, who helped with the DNA? Who built the DNA? Who broke the DNA? Enzymes, which are proteins. Last biomolecule is nucleic acid, chomp, with a phosphorus. These are your instructions. You have 2 forms of nucleic acids. You have DNA and RNA. DNA stays in the nucleus. RNA can come out, but they're both made with the same chon elements, okay, ATGC or AUGC, okay. And then last but not least, when we talk about biomolecules, we talk about enzymes. Enzymes are proteins because they do stuff. Enzymes, they never get used up for some reason, but they either break stuff down, like if you're breaking down fat, you have enzymes that break down fat, or if you need to build muscle, you have enzymes that build, so they break and build. They like living at specific conditions, so you have ideal conditions, and when you get too high or too low, too high pH, too low pH, too high temperature, too low temperature, you start to what's called denature, which means fall apart. Okay, cells. Eukaryotic. You do have a nucleus, no nucleus. Also, I like drawing eukaryotic like an egg. Remember, if you draw an egg, it looks like it has a little nucleus. So eukaryote, like an egg, has a nucleus, no. And it's actually not just nucleus, it's internal membranes. So for example, a bacteria is a prokaryote. And I always say bacteria, those dumb bacteria, they don't even have a nucleus, they don't have a brain. they don't have any internal structures. But then you have a protist that looks like a bacteria that has a nucleus and sometimes has other kind of things. Then you have an animal cell that has a lot of internal membranes, like a nucleus, like the ER, like the Golgi, like the mitochondria, all that stuff. So even if it has one membrane looking like thing in the inside, it is a eukaryote. Okay, here's some major organelles. Make sure you know what these do. Nucleus stores DNA. Ribosomes make protein. Remember, you have a whole bunch of ribs, so you have a whole bunch of ribosomes, and they make protein. And then what do you eat ribs? You eat the protein off of the ribs. So that I like to remember it like that. ER, emergency room, fixes the protein. Golgi sends the protein. So there's three that work together. Ribosomes make the protein. ER fixes the protein. Golgi sends out the protein. Mitochondria, mighty, energy, makes energy. Now, everything has a mitochondria, everything makes energy, but plants are the only thing that has a chloroplast that actually processes the energy and makes its own food. Chloroplast makes the glucose. We have to eat the glucose. Okay? Chloroplast makes the glucose, gives it to the mitochondria. We have to eat the glucose, give it to our mitochondria. Vacuole, like a vacuum, it stores, WWF, wastewater food. Lysosome, like Lysol, it cleans, it digests waste because it has a whole bunch of enzymes in it. Cell membrane is selectively permeable, only lets certain things in and out, lets good things in, like a bunch of glucose, puts bad things out, like a bunch of digested waste. Cell wall is only in plants, so this is for structure and support. Cilia is like the little arms for movement. Flagella is the big tail for movement. And then a size comparison, just so you know, you have plant and animal cells, which are eukaryotic. Then I would say prokaryotes are 100 times smaller, and then a virus is 100 times smaller than that. Okay. Passive and active transport. So this is how do we transport things in and out of the cell. Okay, this is through simple diffusion, which doesn't require any energy. So you either just go with the flow and things just go where they need to go without any energy, or you have to fight and you have to use energy. Okay, so we like passive. You're just chill, don't use energy. So no energy, you're going from a high concentration to a low. It's kind of like if you're in a crowded room and then go into a least crowded room. Do you have to use any energy to go to that least crowded room? No. So you just naturally flow there. Okay, so you're always going from a high to a low. For example, if somebody's smoking a cigarette, they blow out, the particles are congested in front of them, high concentration, and then they diffuse out into the room. Okay, you go from a high concentration to a low concentration. Now that is particles. Okay, when water moves, water can move anywhere, but it always wants to make an equilibrium or a balanced homeostasis state. So water can move in or out, but it always wants to dilute the stuff. Okay, so if you have a very concentrated part in your body, water is going to be drawn into it to dilute it out. That's why if you eat a lot of salt, sodium, you retain a lot of water, okay? So osmosis, the movement of water. Iso means same. Hypo, like a hippo, you get bigger. Hyper, you get smaller. So ask yourself, what makes you get these states? If it's the same, it means there's the same concentration in and out. Isotonic, Hypo, what would make you be big? What would make you fill with water? Oh, if there's a lot of particles inside. So when you have a lot of particles internally or on that space, water goes inside. Hyper, why would you get skinny and scrawny? Well, it'd be water coming out of you. So there must be more particles outside, okay? So if these are fish in their environment, a hypotonic fish would probably be a saltwater fish put into a freshwater, and all the fresh water is going to go into that saltwater fish. Oppositely, an hypertonic fish would be a freshwater fish put into a saltwater environment, and all of its water is going to go out and dilute that salt. Now, when you use energy, you're going from low to high. So you're going from a less crowded room into a crowded area. You're fighting your way, okay? So for example, if you have a lot out here and few in here, this is passive. This does not require energy, but here's active. You have a few in here and you have to pump them through protein channels, which use ATP energy, into those crowded areas. Okay, second way you use energy is if you're having to bring a lot of stuff in. So endocytosis or exocytosis. You either bring in a lot or you spew out a lot, and that just does take a lot of energy to move that cell membrane. Okay. Photosynthesis and cellular respiration kind of seem really tricky, but really just know that whatever animals put out, plants take in. Whatever plants put out, animals take in. It's a cycle, okay? So if you want to think, what does plants need? Plants need sunlight. They also need carbon dioxide and water. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from animals, okay? So animals breathe that carbon dioxide, and we actually have to get rid of liquid waste through water, okay? But we like to water our plants. Okay, plants are glucose. They feed themselves. Plants give us glucose because we eat it. So we eat them and their glucose. They also put off oxygen, okay? So it's a cycle, okay? Where does photosynthesis occur in? It occurs in the chloroplast, okay? And the chlorophyll is the pigment that makes the ATP, or makes the glucose. Then you have cellular respiration. Think of cells breathing, like need the oxygen to make the energy. Now cellular respiration is actually what makes the energy, okay? Glucose is not energy yet. It is the fuel to make the energy, okay? And this happens in the mitochondria. So animals only have a mitochondria, need to eat their glucose, but plants make their glucose in the chloroplast and just give it right over to their mitochondria. Okay, now let's talk about bacteria versus viruses if they were to ever ask you. So remember, bacteria are alive, viruses are dead, okay? How viruses do what they do when they're dead, we do not know yet, okay? So bacteria are living and they're prokaryotic, which means they don't have a nucleus. That's why I call them dumb bacteria. Don't even have a nucleus. So they're basically just cell membrane, cell wall. So they have to have that outer protection. That does not count as a membrane, okay, the outer. Then they're just filled with cytoplasm, have some ribosomes. Ribosomes also don't count as a membrane organelle because they're just little balls, okay? It's the membrane-bound things that have the membranes around them, kind of like the nucleus or the mitochondria, chloroplast, lysosome, ER, Golgi, stuff like that. So really, they're just a membrane with their cytoplasm, ribosomes, and free-floating DNA. Okay. You can kill bacteria by getting antibiotics. Remember, antibiotics upset your stomach because you have so many good bacteria in your stomach. Okay. So it kills the bad bacteria making you sick, but it kills the good bacteria too. Now, we have good bacteria, which are microorganisms that live in our gut, help us break down things that we can't break down. But we also have bad bacteria that get us sick, things like strep and staph. Okay, when you learn about the kingdoms of life, you're going to learn about two groups of bacteria. Eubacteria, the bacteria that you see, that's common bacteria. Then you learn about archaeobacteria, which is bacteria that is archaic. Man, I don't see that barely ever. That's in a sulfur hot spring. That's in a volcano. They're extreme, okay? Now, viruses, they're dead. If you take antibiotics for a virus, you're not doing anything to kill that virus, okay? Viruses need a host, but they need to be a specific host. So for example, this coronavirus, if this coronavirus that we're dealing with now gets into a lizard, it may not do anything because that is not the target host cell for the coronavirus, okay? But since humans are a good target cell, then they come into us and they start tricking our cells into making more coronaviruses, okay? So the two parts of every virus, whether a virus looks like a circle or it looks like, remember that picture, it looks like a computer with legs, it's really gross looking. The outside is a protein capsid, think of like a capsule, and the inside is some kind of nucleic acid. So now that you know about DNA and RNA, it could be DNA or RNA. Okay, here are the two life cycles that they could ask about. You got lytic, quick word, fast, lit match. This is the quick cycle, happens within days, like 2 to 7 days, gets you sick quick. Then you got the lysogenic, the longer word, longer, sneakier cycle. This happens, it could be months and years. What is a virus that people don't know they have for months or years? HIV, herpes, okay? A virus that you know you have right away is like the flu. you get exposed, you get it in 2 days, it's fast, you're so sick, okay, it's killing. Your immune system finally handles it. But then you get those longer, sneakier viruses that go through the lysogenic cycle. Now, why are they longer, sneakier? This is why. Lytic, lit, mat, short. They attach, replicate, bust open your host cells, and your immune system flags and is like, something's going on over there, and immediately attacks it. Now look at the lysogenic. Attach, inject, and it replicates the viral DNA along with yours, and you can't even see by the outside that there's a virus there. So it's sneaky because we don't know anything's happening. Anytime these lysogenic cycles can turn lytic, and then boom. So that's when people have herpes, and then an outbreak. It's when all of their lysogenic cells turn lytic, or HIV having a spell. That's when all their lysogenic turn lytic, okay? So lytic can't turn lysogenic, but lysogenic can become lytic. DNA versus RNA. A TGC, a UGC. DNA, it's double helix. It's confined in the nucleus. It's too big and bulky to leave. So it's double-stranded, and it's always in the nucleus no matter what. Unless it's a prokaryotic cell, then it's just free-floating. RNA, a UGC, single-stranded. It's small enough to leave the nuclear pores, so it could be in the nucleus, but could also be in the cytoplasm. Where would it be in the cytoplasm? At a ribosome, being translated into a protein. Complementary, the word. What is the complementary base pair? That goes with it. What goes with it? Okay, what binds to it? DNA replication. Remember, when you're replicating DNA, you start with the DNA, it opens, complementary bases come in, they bind horizontally first, then the backbone binds vertically, and then if you would put them on top of each other, it's the same thing. So technically, when you have an old strand that rips into two, then each side gets new. So each new piece of DNA is half old, half new. Transcription, C comes before L. Transcription is when we turn DNA to RNA. RNA can leave the nucleus, find a ribosome, and it's translated into amino acids. So remember the amino acid chart. You read the amino acid chart. Transfer RNA brings amino acid in. There's 3 types of RNA we learned about in biology. There's messenger RNA. This is the messenger that is made by the DNA. DNA makes a message that leaves the nucleus. There's ribosomal RNA that makes the ribosome, and there's transfer RNA that brings in the amino acids. Messenger RNA, ribosomal RNA, transfer RNA. Okay, genetic. Homo means same, hetero means different. Recessive means hidden, 2 littles. Dominant, you have a dominant allele. You could have 1 dominant allele or 2 dominant alleles. It doesn't matter. You're still going to be brown-eyed, the dominant trait, if you have 1 or 2, for the most part, okay? So you can be big B, which is dominant, but it's also hetero because they're the same. You could be big B, little b, so they're different, so that's heterozygous dominant. Or if you're little, the only way to be little is homozygous recessive. Okay, your genotype are your genes. Your phenotype is like your face. So I think pheno, like it started with an F, face. Come on in. Phenotype, face. Yeah, you can grab anybody. If they give you 2 traits, so this is my cheat method. If they give you 2 traits, so say if they say, okay, dimples and freckles, dimples and free earlobes, one of the parents or both of the parents will always have some kind of homozygous genetic combination. You can always find out what the answer to a double Punnett square is by just looking at the parent's DNA and just knowing, okay, if this parent is big B, that baby definitely has a big B phenotype. And so what's going to happen is 3 of your answer choices aren't going to say that. So even though if you would do the Punnett square out, you'd get the right answer just by reading and knowing, well, shoot, if that's a homozygous dominant person, there's a 100% chance it's going to get a big B. That means all of the babies are going to be homozygous dominant. There will only ever be one answer choice that says 100% that. The rest will say like 50 this or that, 75 this or that. Okay, that's how you get around it. Cell cycle. there's stuff on cell cycles. So remember, out of your whole cell cycle, if it was a clock from 12 o'clock back to 12 o'clock, we start, and this is interphase. Growth, growth, replication, replication, growth, growth, growth. Literally, the whole clock is growing and replicating, and then this is mitosis, dividing, and cytokinesis, okay? So, we grow, we replicate our DNA, and we grow again. So remember, if we have a cell, we just can't divide it into two smaller cells. We have to grow double, then divide. So, interphase is growth, replication, growth, and then mitosis, you divide it. Well, how do you evenly divide it? You go through these phases. Ready? Mitosis. Prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and then cytokinesis sometimes is its own process outside of mitosis. So ready? Prophase. Pro, no nucleus. That's when the nucleus starts to disappear, because remember, during mitosis, you're going to have those spindle fibers that come in and attach, so you have to dissolve the nucleus. Also, the spaghetti DNA starts to turn into very tightly packed chromosomes. Metaphase, they line up in the middle. Anaphase, they get pulled away, and all the pictures kind of look like this, because they all look like pretty X's, and then they get pulled away. So it almost looks like a mirror image that looking like this, okay? Telophase, two cells look like they're forming, and both sides of the cell want to protect their DNA, so they start forming new nuclei. And then by cytokinesis, remember cytoplasm, it's literally cytoplasm cutting, okay? So we have interphase, mitosis, and then cytokinesis. Interphase, we grow and replicate. Metaphase, we divide everything that's inside of the cell. And then cytokinesis is we physically pinch off into two things. There are checkpoints during the phases, mostly during interphase. G1, checkpoint, did we grow enough? G2, checkpoint, did we replicate enough? S, G3, checkpoint, do we grow again enough? If ever it says no, you go into what's called G halo, and halo, that's dead people. Okay, this cell is going to just die because it's going to say, there's something wrong with my programming. I think for the betterment of this human or for that organism, we need to terminate. It's called cell death, cell termination. So if a cell is not growing or replicating correctly, it stops at a checkpoint. It either corrects itself, so you can go into a checkpoint and then get out of a checkpoint, but if you can't correct yourself, it terminates it. Guess what cells don't check themselves? Cancer. Rapid growth, okay? Do not follow rules. Do not die. Do not do the proper things. Okay, now mitosis, think of your toes. Your toes are just regular cells. Your toes do not have sex cells. Your toes are not sexy. So we say mitosis, toes, body cell division, okay? Body cells are also called somatic cells, okay? Then you got meiosis. Meo baby, these are sex cells, okay? Now sex cells are different because they're half the DNA. Remember, women have sex cells, eggs, men have sex cells, sperm. Man can't just make a baby by himself, woman can't just make a baby himself because they only have half DNA. So when sperm or egg are by themselves, they die unless they can fertilize and become a full whole. So during reproduction, if the egg and the sperm are not in the physical same location, the sperm will die, the egg will come down, and that is a menstrual cycle, and it will die. So only when the egg is at the right place at the right time, the sperm come, half and half make a whole, this is when reproduction happens. Okay, in meiosis, sex cells are called gametes. You think game on, oh baby, okay? Also, last thing, crossing over. This is when, now it's not during regular cells, because crossing over is when you have two chromosomes that get so close to each other that they switch arms and legs. Now that increases genetic diversity, which is great. We love being genetically diverse. That's why you and your siblings look very similar, but not exactly, because y'all have crossing over, okay? This does not happen during mitosis or during somatic cells. So you don't want genetic diversity if you're just making new skin or new eyes. You want the same stuff. It's only during sex cells. So all of our gametes are genetically diverse because of this crossing over that happens. Okay, energy in ecosystems. So remember, instead of saying blank eats the blank eats the blank, we say blank gives energy to the blank. So ready? Producer gives energy to the primary consumer. Primary consumer gives energy to the secondary consumer. Secondary gives energy to the tertiary consumer. Who has the most original energy? That first producer, the first thing at the bottom of the periodic table, energy pyramid. Okay, so plants, they make their energy from the sun, so they start off with 100% energy. Remember, only 10% of energy goes to the next level. So smaller producers, primary consumers that eat the producer, mice, rabbits, deer, they get a lot, okay, they get 10%. But then the things that eat the primary, which are the secondary, they only get 100 to 10 to 1 to 0.1 to 0.01. See how we're basically moving the decimal over? So we have carnivores that eat meat, herbivores that eat plants, omnivores that eat both. Producers are autotrophs, make their own food. Consumers are heterotrophs that need to get different things of food. Decomposers break stuff down, and decomposers can be the end of any food chain because they technically can break down anything. Now, decomposers are not top predators. Decomposers are not like tertiary consumers. They are decomposers. They're in a group of their own, okay? Also, scavengers. Scavengers, like decomposers, will eat dead things. Now remember, they're eating fresh meat, so they're not necessarily eating like dead stuff, but they're not a top predator. They just eat anything that's physically dead that they can scavenge over. Remember about decomposers. Decomposers, which are fungi, they don't need sunlight. Even though a mushroom is a decomposer and looks like it gets energy from the sunlight because it's in our grass and stuff, it is on top of something that's rotting and dead underneath it. You can put a shade over it and it'll still grow, okay? Same as mold. 10% gets transferred to the next level, 90% gets lost. Well, how does it get lost as heat during digestion, during trying to chase that organism, but it gets lost as heat. Okay, also last thing, order of least to greatest biomass. Okay, so you have, we'll start with the smallest. You have, and we'll start even smaller. You have an atom that makes a molecule. So you have like an atom of carbon making a molecule of carbohydrate, C6H12O6. Then you're making molecule, molecule or biomolecule. Then you have an organelle. We could say making the chloroplast. Then you're making the cell. We'll say that's an animal cell. Then you make a tissue, which would be like cardiac muscle tissue. Then you make an organ, which is like the heart. Then you make an organ system, which is a circulatory system. Then you make an organism, okay? Now that's on the micro level. So ready? Let's break it down the other way. I am a human. Humans are made up of organ systems, like my circulatory system, digestive system, endocrine system. Okay, so we have human, organ system, circulatory system, organ, heart, broken down into tissue, smooth cardiac muscle, broken down to a cell, one smooth cardiac muscle cell, broken down to an organelle, biomolecule, atom. Okay, so ready? Atom, molecule or biomolecule, organelle, cell. Cells form tissues, tissues form organs, organs form organ systems form an organism. Okay, now let's go up. You have one organism such as a human, then you have a population of humans. So you come into Bremon and it says population 929, you're only talking about one group during a population. So you have one organism, many organisms are the same kind as a population. Okay, next thing is a community. If you would go to a community center and say, everybody come, we're not just talking about populations, we're talking about everything. So think of the word community center, everybody's allowed. Now we're not talking about rocks and air and stuff, so we're still talking about living things. So you have an organism, a population of organisms, but then a community is all populations, but we're all living, okay? Now, a community, which is all living things, plus that's biotic, plus all the abiotic factors, so all the dead things, living and dead, that is now an ecosystem. It's a system of living and dead. So ready? We have an organism, a population of organisms, community is a bunch of populations, ecosystem are communities which are living, plus all the dead stuff, okay? Now, after ecosystem, we go to biomes, which are specific ecosystems, and then we have the whole biosphere, okay? But they will try to trick you with the population, organism, population, community, ecosystem. You have to know those. Okay, evolution, how does it occur? Okay, we hypothesize things evolve through their fossils. Homology, homo, same things, the way we look and do, okay? Location, finding these things, the fossils like in the same locations. Breeding, if things are night breeders, day breeders, okay? But DNA is always the best way to prove evolution, prove things are related. Okay, adaptations occur for environment. As your environment changes, you adapt, okay? Natural selection. The strongest genes survive. So it's not the physical strongest, it's the best genes. So for example, there may be a very strong bear, okay? So strong bear, ooh, it's a black bear, okay? Strong black bear, okay? Well, let's just say this terrain, all the grass died, and instead it was mushy brown dirt, okay? So you have these really strong black bear, and then you have a little bit weaker brown bears, okay? The brown bears can camouflage when all the hunters come. So instead of the strongest surviving, it's the best traits are surviving, okay? Same with like tree frogs, for example. Say if their environment changes to where instead of all of the ecosystems being lush green, there's a lot more wooded things. Okay, maybe the yellow and green tree frogs are no longer naturally selected and the brown ones are. So, natural selection, the strongest genes, not the physical strongest. Okay, and then adaptation, you adapt because of the natural selection. Okay, biodiversity, biology, diverse, many and different. So biodiversity, who is the most biodiverse? That'd be like a tropical rainforest. So many more different diverse species than Bremont. Okay, succession, this is in that unit. Okay, think about in social study, who succeeds? Who is the next victor? So succession is just kind of like politics, but with biology and land. So you have primary succession, secondary succession, you could have another succession. So basically, the first time the earth gets basically fertilized with organisms, that is the first primary succession. Then it grows up into a climax community, and anytime that community is cut down, the next set of growth is called secondary succession. So ready? Primary succession is when the soil is made from lichens. Lichens are like microorganisms, okay? And then grow. So it's you establish the first growth of soil. Okay, then you have secondary succession, growth after natural disaster. So it doesn't have to be a natural disaster. Like for example, say if Walmart came and clear cut a whole forest to make a Walmart, and then they said, sorry, we're not gonna make that Walmart anymore. Oh my gosh. Now, after you clear cut that whole forest, do you have to reestablish the soil? No. Soil is already established, so you're not starting over with new primary, you're just gonna do a secondary succession. Almost done, guys. Taxonomy. Okay, so this is how we organize, how we classify things based on their characteristics. Okay, just like if you memorize Roy G. Biv, the colors of the rainbow, Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, there's a way to remember the different levels of organization. So first off, we have kingdoms. We know about kingdoms, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, but there's more than that. So you have a kingdom, then you have something called a phylum, then a class, family, genus, species. Ooh, class, order, family, genus, species. So this is how you remember it. King Philip came over for good spaghetti. You'll watch a video in my class about it. It's silly. King Philip came over for good spaghetti. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Okay, so kingdom is super broad. Look at all the things that are in the animal kingdom. But then when you get to something specific, like a genus, this may be only things, like only cats. So for example, every cat, every dog, every animal you can name is in the animal kingdom. But then maybe only 10 cats are in the genus Felis, okay? But then only one cat would be a wild bobcat, Felis lupus. Okay, I'm just guessing. Okay, so when you're in a kingdom, that's a broad group to be in. And as you go down, you're more specific. So for example, humans, Homo sapiens. Homo is our genus, sapien is our species. Nothing else is the same species. Okay, all dogs are Canis domesticus. Okay, but then you have a wolf that is not a dog, which is Canis also. So they both share the same genus, but instead of being a domesticated dog, it is a wild dog, that's Lupus. Okay, so because they're both dog-like, they share the same genus, but then they get separated by their species. Okay, symbiosis, super easy. Sim, together, bio, living, living together. So when you live together with something, and remember it's not the same species, it's a different species, and both benefit, that's mutualism. Mutual, both, mutual friends, y'all both have friends. So mutualism, both benefit. This would be like an acacia tree and the ants that live on it, okay? The ants get a house, and the acacia, the home, like they live on the acacia tree as like a home, and the tree gets protection because any birds that come to like try to scuff on that tree, the ants jump all over it. So those are two things that live in a mutualistic relationship. You got commensalism, co, C to the O, so it's a plus to the O. This is where one benefits and the other one don't really get anything. This, for example, would be like a shark and a remora. So a shark is like, a big old shark, and a remora is almost like a small shark. So what happens is the remora has this suction thing on its head and backside, and it suctions onto the bigger shark. We'll pretend the bigger shark's on the back, okay? So the remora is so small in comparison to the shark that it doesn't even know what's on there. So like the shark is like the zero, like, I don't know, I'm not being affected. But the remora doesn't have to use any energy, gets a free ride, basically opens its mouth, and anything the shark eats, nom nom, and all the debris kind of like all in the water, the remora opens its mouth and gets a free ride and free food. So remora benefits, the shark, it doesn't even feel it, okay? Parasitism, y'all know that's not a good word, parasite. That's little thing that's leeching energy off you. Do parasites kill you? Not in general, okay? If you leave a parasite untreated, yes it will. So a parasite would be one benefiting, the other one suffering. This would be like a dog and a tick, okay? The dog is still the bigger organism, and the parasite is the smaller, more passive organism, but it's slowly leaching energy. Now, predation, one benefits, the other one dies. Now, say if that tick had a disease and killed the dog, that tick is not a predator. That is not predation. That is parasitism that just led to death. In a true predation, one benefits, one dies, you have a predator-prey. This would be like a lion and a gazelle, okay? Competition, two different, it could be through the same species or the same level of organization, and they're competing for a similar resource, and they're always kind of battling. So for example, two plants battling for sunlight, two rams battling for a female, two birds at the same level of organization trying to find food, okay? Last but not least, animal and plant systems. Okay, circulatory, blood delivers. So circulation, what does our blood do? It delivers oxygen, it delivers glucose, and it also picks up waste and delivers that to our excretory system. Picks up oxygen from our lungs and picks up glucose from our digestive system. Respiratory, gas exchange, oxygen, CO2. Digestive, breaks down and absorbs. So digestive, two things, not just digest, but it breaks down. Stomach acids, actually, starts up here. Chewing, enzymes, stomach acids, and then absorbs in our intestines. Excretory, get rid of waste. We can secrete it. And excretory is mostly urinating. Some people will tell you that digestive, because digestive deals with food and poop is the actual getting rid of the food, that people think that digestive actually involves the bowel movement also. But we're just going to say almost all questions with excretory deal with urinating, going through the kidneys, the ureters, the urethra, the bladder, all that stuff. Okay. Skeletal protection and support, integumentary. Gum, what looks like bubble gum, our skin, especially if you would ever slice it open, if you ever watch any of those plastic surgery shows. So this is our outer protection. Immune system fights off disease, our white blood cells, helper T cells. Now, so there's three systems that actually protect us. Our skeletal, which is our bones protect our organs. Our integumentary, outer protection, so things don't, like if somebody coughs on me, my skin's going to protect me, but then the inner protection is the immune system. Nervous system, sensory, feeling, touching, processing, muscular movement, endocrine, what do you have in your urine? Hormones, and then reproductive, making gametes. Last but not least, plant systems. Okay, plants don't have as many systems as us, but they got a root and a shoot system. Picture my feet on the ground, anything in the ground is part of the root system. Anything above the ground is part of the shoot system. Roots absorb micronutrients, absorb water. Even if you water the top of a plant, it does not get absorbed till it goes to the roots, okay? The shoot system then brings water up, okay, right? If you absorb water down there, it has to bring it up to the sky. This is through something called xylem, sky, okay? Where do you make your glucose? Through your leaves, okay? So the leaves absorb the sun, make the glucose. Well, guess what? You have to give that glucose to all of the plant. So the glucose comes in and it flows low, okay? Mostly low, but it could technically go up if there were flowers or something at the top of that plant. So in general, you have two different plant delivery systems. You have sky, xylem, up, what goes up, water gets absorbed, water goes up, xylem delivers water, flow low, what goes low, you make the glucose and it has to go low. Roots, underground, shoot, up. Okay, the different tropisms, this is how plants move. Tropisms, how plants take their trips. We're going on a trip. Okay, phototropism, moving toward photons, the sun. So believe it or not, you can move a plant away from a window and it is going to grow crooked to the light. That's called phototropism. Okay, geotropism, geography. You can knock a plant over on its side and it will then start still growing up because it knows by gravity that is down, that is up, okay? Last one, thymo. What I tell the kids about thymotropism, you say, don't touch my thigh, especially think of somebody who you do not want to touch your thigh. Don't touch me. It's touch. So this would be like a Venus flytrap. If something touches it, it reacts. Okay, so you react to sunlight, you react to north, south, east, west, gravity, and you react to touch. Okay, hope this helped.